Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to our friends over on the West Coast. This is Jennifer Schaus, and we are coming to you live today from Washington, D.C., and we're covering a popular webinar on the topic of GSA schedules. Today, we're going to take about an hour to cover executive orders, requirements, and timelines related to the current GSA solicitation. And just a little bit of background here. I am joined today by Shauna Weatherly. She heads up Fed Sub K, and this is a consulting firm that helps small businesses navigate federal contracting. Since retiring from federal service in 2022, Shauna has built a strong following, and you can see her many followers over on LinkedIn and her great content there, where she shares insight on acquisition topics. So she's got over 35 years of experience, longer than maybe some of you folks have been alive. And she's got an impressive background. She worked in roles at Department of the Army, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, FAA, and GSA. Her expertise spans procurement of supplies, services, and construction, including oversight of the $750 billion with a big GSA Smart Pay program. And let me tell you a little bit about the work that she did at GSA, since that is the topic that we're covering today. So at GSA, she led contract quality and workforce training for the travel, transportation, and logistics category. And she served as a FAR policy advisor to the Civilian Agency Acquisition Council, CAAC, contributing to major initiatives affecting SAM.gov. So quite an impressive background there. She's a former chief of contracting and FAR policy subject matter expert, and has instructed courses on cost reimbursement, contracting, federal schedules, and small business utilization. So I think she's done it all, so to speak. And Shauna, I'm really excited to have you with me today. It's been fun working with you and preparing the content that is obviously relevant and timely. Here's my mugshot. This is Jennifer again, based here in downtown Washington, D.C. And I've been in federal procurement for, let's say, 20 plus years, not on the federal side, but more on the consulting side, where we work with companies to help them get onto the GSA schedule. We've got other services and over 700 webinars over on our YouTube channel, which does not cost you anything to download. On that note, I will remind everybody today's webinar is complimentary. It is being recorded. In the event that you're watching the recording over on YouTube, for when it gets out there, give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. And if you're here with us live today on Wednesday afternoon, we're glad that you're with us. And if you've registered, then you will get the recording. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? There was a little bit in the description of the webinar when you signed up, but really kind of three main things. We're going to educate and inform you about basically what's happening in federal procurement. A lot of changes have started rolling out since January of this year. And just based on Shauna's background and my background, which are similar but also very different, we will give you our kind of thoughts. Not so much opinions, but really just professional thoughts on kind of what's happening. And then we will take your questions. So if you do have questions, do not put them in the chat. Please put them in the question section. We will answer them in the order that they are received, and we will read them. Your questions will be anonymous, so there's no stupid question. You don't need to be worried about us reading off your name if you have a question that you think seems silly or naive. So we welcome your questions, and again, we'll read them off in the order that they are received, as long as you type them in the question section. Okay, and let's keep rolling here. So as I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded. If you follow our YouTube channel, which again doesn't cost you anything, you'll be the first to know that this webinar has been uploaded. If you're looking for the PowerPoint, and we've got a lot of slides in the PowerPoint, you can find those over on slideshare.net. Okay, so here's our agenda. which again was really laid out in the description. So we'll go through the EOs, a little bit about the solicitation, timelines, some information on the sin removal, TDR. We'll give you our considerations. We'll kind of remind you a little bit about what we do and how we can help you get through these topics that we're covering. And then we've got a couple pages of links that you can use to help you in this process. Okay, so the executive order overview, I'm going to turn this over to Shauna to cover. And Shauna, the floor is all yours. Again, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jennifer, and thank you so much for having me. I think this is a really timely topic for everybody, so I'm glad to see we've got a great group of folks on the line. So just starting basically is we've had, as you've seen, oodles and oodles of executive orders that have come out since the administration took over on January 20th, and several of these impact government buying. As with every administration, we kind of go through this. There's different focuses and policy outcomes. And we're seeing a lot of the traditional routes, they are usually congressional action now and formal rulemaking, switch kind of into this EO process where we're getting all these executive orders written by the Office of the President. A lot of these, again, like I said, relate to government buying, and in that GSA schedules, how it relates to the schedules program. So I plucked out the three main executive orders that have been released to date, and there is one OMB memorandum that specifically impacts buying as well. And so we're going to touch on each of those in the slides to come. So Jennifer, we can move on to the first executive order, which is Executive Order 14240. Eliminating waste and saving taxpayer dollars by consolidating procurement. So this executive order was signed on March 20th, and it states that its purpose is to, quote, return the General Services Administration to its original purpose, rather than continuing to have multiple agencies and agency subcomponents separately carry out these same functions. So the outcome of this executive order is basically the consolidation of all domestic federal procurement for common goods and services to GSA. Now, common goods and services are going to be defined as those that fall within the 10 categories. You may have heard of category management that have been established by a leadership council, the Category Management Leadership Council, under the Office of Federal Procurement Policy. And they are comprised of the 10 sectors where the government does most of its procurement spending. And I'm going to rattle those off, but I'm just going to tell you, if you go out to Mr. Google out there and say category management GSA, it will pop up their category management page and this list. So I'll just rattle them off really quick. It's facilities and construction, IT, transportation and logistics, travel, human capital, professional services, medical, industrial products and services, security and protection, and office management. Now, 6 of those categories are managed by GSA. So you can tell that the common goods and services that fall within those 10 categories will likely be shifting to GSA for procurement. Highly specialized buying in each of those categories will remain at the individual agency level, and GSA and agencies are going through this discussion right now as to what will shift to GSA and what will stay at the agency level. The executive order in its language also establishes that the GSA administrator is the executive agent for all government acquisition contracts for information technology going forward. So that's in addition to GSA already being the category management lead for IT. We're seeing some of that in play now. If you read the news, we're seeing how GSA is reaching agreements with Google and Adobe and Oracle and Microsoft and others for government discounts for things like software licenses, cloud solutions, and IT solutions. So you can see some of that management and executive agency coming into play with the negotiation of those types of agreements, like under GSA's OneGov and things like that. So just to give you an idea of what the timelines are for all this, the timeline for the implementation of this executive order is that within 60 days, agencies will submit proposals to the GSA to have them assume their domestic procurement of common goods and services. And that, like I said, that's been underway for a while, with the agencies going back and forth with GSA, inventorying their contracts and having those discussions. But then within 90 days, GSA had to submit a plan to assume common product and service buying to the OMB for approval. And that's where we're kind of at right now, is that plan is in the process of being submitted or has been submitted. Nobody has really said it out loud, what is, where we're at, but that's around the time frame. And GSA has already taken on the common goods and services buying workload from 4 agencies, OPM, Education, SBA, and HUD, as part of a pilot for this consolidation. So the plan is for that consolidation to continue with at least 11 agencies to be completed by the end of the fiscal year 2025. That doesn't mean that the end of fiscal year buying will shift to GSA yet. It just means by the end of FY25, there will be a plan in place for GSA to continue, and then remaining agencies will roll into the GSA procurement ecosystem in FY 2026. So that's the first executive order. A lot there to think about, but that kind of tells you how GSA is involved and impacted by it. Next slide. So this memo came out last week, and it's timely, so we wanted to throw it in here. It talks about the consolidating of federal procurement activities. And what it was is it was signed on the 18th, and basically July 18th, and OMB, their director, provided further guidance on this consolidation effort that was outlined in the executive order we just talked about. And that memo goes into more detail and outlines the fact that there will be 2 work streams for procurement consolidation. One is going to be the use of category management principles, which we just talked about in those 10 groups, and the centralization of procurement functions at GSA, which the executive order outlined. So the memo, actually, if you look at it, it's online. You can Google OMB 25-31, it will pop up. And you will see in the appendix, there's a diagram for the agency decision-making on what contracts should actually migrate to GSA and those that should stay with the agency. So you can get a feel for what agencies are going through in terms of that decision-making process, because it is ongoing. Agencies are still awarding contracts, so it doesn't stop just at one point in time. They're going to still be continually making these decisions as they go along. The memo also clarifies that if a commercial product or service is available on an existing GSA, government-wide contract, or agency contract, that agencies must use that contract to meet their needs unless an exception is approved by the head of the agency. So that's important to know, because that means that we're going to see a lot of buying being pushed to existing contracts, less coming out on the open market for new purchasing, hence why it's important to talk about maybe consideration of a GSA schedule. The timeline for this executive order implementation, or this EO's implementation, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's not an EO, it's an OMB memo. I'm gonna get confused because this is the memo and it's new. But for this memo, it states that within 60 days, a model deviation text is going to be forthcoming to put in FAR 8.004, which talks about mandatory buying, Part 8, and it is going to say that agencies are required to use these contracts as their first source, these existing GSA government-wide or agency contracts as their first source for commercial buying. And that agencies are going to be required within 30 days of receipt of that language to start implementation of it in terms of their buying processes and procedures. Along with that, during the same 60-day period, government-wide category managers, the agencies that oversee each of those 10 categories, are going to start identifying spend areas to OMB for maybe award of new GWACs or mods to existing contracts to maybe expand ordering authority from, let's say, a small group of agencies to government-wide, or from government-wide to maybe modify how that ordering is done in a more easier way to track that ordering and things like that. So we're going to see category managers working with OMB on that. And GSA must also, during this same time frame, work with OMB to address resourcing, technology funding, and agreements with agencies to take on their commercial buying around this new workload. So there's a lot going on that just came out of this memo last week, and kind of shows us the shape of how we may see and where we may see buying done in the future. Next slide. The second executive order is ensuring commercial cost-effective solutions in federal contracts. So This executive order was signed on April 15th, and this EO requires that agency procure commercially available products and services, including those that can be modified to fill agency's need to the maximum extent practicable, pursuant to the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act of 1994, which is a public law. And so what this means is basically the government should use the competitive marketplace and look for innovative solutions when buying and focus their efforts towards buying commercial products and services first. And this buying is presently governed primarily under FAR Parts 12 and 13.5. So, and I'm going to say that with a grain of salt because we're going to talk about the next EO, which is going to address FAR changes. So just know currently it's under FAR 12 and 13.5. So this order at its core requires that agency review all market research results for non-commercial buys and identify commercial resources if available. And if commercial resources are not available, agencies have to obtain approval authority before they can proceed. So again, we're not going to see a lot of non-commercial buys. I think we're going to see the government really dig into commerciality, making sure that commercial definition is tight when they're looking at what they're buying. Do we really need to have a non-commercial buy in the traditional sense of what has happened before? So where we maybe stretch what is commercial because we need it modified a certain amount of times into, let's say, a non-commercial type buy. So we're going to see that tighten up a bit. So the timeline for this executive order is within 60 days. They're going to access all open agency pre-solicitation, solicitation awards, and sole source actions to make sure that the non-commercial assessment is true and shouldn't go toward a commercial buy. And then within 120 days and annually thereafter, the agency must report to OMB the details of all that compliance on the order. So how well they're doing to comply. So the next EO, Jennifer, for the next slide is 14275, and this is our last one we'll talk about. I know this is a lot of kind of dry policy stuff, but it's important to understand. This one was also signed April 15th, and this executive order is to, quote, create the most agile, effective, and efficient procurement system possible, removing undue barriers such as unnecessary regulations, while simultaneously allowing for the expansion of the national and defense industrial bases. So as a result, GSA has initiated with the FAR Council a FAR, quote unquote, overhaul is what it's being called, to amend the regulations at Title 41 Parts 102 through 79 and 102-83 Code of Federal Regulations, and take on any other necessary steps that are needed to streamline acquisition regulations. This includes agencies that acquire or utilize federally owned or leased spaces, that they're part of this order as well, the real estate stuff. This is the first major FAR significant rewrite in the 40-year history. It's as old as my career, so the FAR is. I started 2 years after the FAR was written, it was introduced. So this is a new, quote unquote, skinny FAR, as some are calling it, and that will keep the language that is only statutory in nature, necessary for simplicity, usability, and strengthening of procurement, and protecting our economic and national security interests. So those are the goals of the rewrite. The executive order also implements a regulatory sunset where after 4 years, unless it's renewed, anything that is non-statutory language that is left in the FAR is going to be subject to review and possible further removal or change. Now, the timeline for this is ongoing right now. We're seeing this happen. We are in this 180-day period of the overhaul, and it should be complete by October 15th. So we may have a new FAR by October 15th. Changes are going to be enacted as they are published by deviation at the agency level. So as these different parts come out, deviation text is being given to agencies, and most agencies are implementing deviations and beginning to work under the changes now. So what you see in the FAR on acquisition.gov, if a new change part has come out, you need to go to the FAR overhaul section and see what that reads, because it's not absorbed into the actual text of the acquisition.gov FAR as it's published now. A couple of different places to look, making it a little confusing for contracting people as well. And the final rulemaking will follow the completion of the final overhaul effort, and it will be done as a single document. So that's what we have looking forward to going into FY26 when it comes to all the executive orders in the OMB. And there will be more to come, I'm sure. But this is I think a good starting place to kind of understand the changing environment we've got going on with policy. So with that, Jennifer, I think we've got your section coming up.
Yeah, thank you so much for a great overview of the executive orders and the OMB information. I apologize for the jumping slides. I'm actually not even touching my computer, so I've got some technical issues either with my laptop or GoToWebinar, but I appreciate your patience with me there. So, and Shauna, you'll jump back in later in the presentation as we cover SIN removals and TDR. But let's first go ahead and talk about GSA as a whole and the solicitation and where it stands now. So who is GSA? Just a quick kind of blurb here. I'm not going to read you the slides, but more or less, in my opinion at least, GSA is somewhat the chief operating officer for the federal agencies. They kind of make sure that things are kind of running as they should. And also of importance is that they are non-appropriated, mostly non-appropriated. So they receive less than 1% taxpayer funded. They are funded through the schedule holders who pay what I call a GSA tax. They call it the industrial funding fee, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And separate from the schedules, there's two other major groups within GSA, the Technology Transfer Service. So when you go to FPDS or a lot of the government websites, GSA is the overseer of that content, the data, the technology behind it. There's also the PBS division within GSA, which is the Public Building Service. So GSA is think of them as the landlord, the real estate agent for government buildings, everything from the Smithsonian that you may visit on vacation or just if you're in the DC metro area on the weekends. So they do a lot. The individual who heads up the GSA is in fact a political appointee. Shauna and I were talking about this yesterday in our preparation. Mike Regas is currently taking over. I know he had background with state, and I think Shauna, you said he also had done some time at GSA in the past.
Yeah, he's been at GSA, I believe, 3 times. Most recently, he was a senior advisor helping like the Office of Small Business and the administrator back in the first Trump White House.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's move on and we'll just talk about the schedule kind of as a whole here. So we realize that there could be companies on the line who are absolutely new to GSA and others who perhaps have a schedule and are kind of been at this for a while. But just again, a high level overview, it's a marketing tool only. I kind of call it a vendor shortlist. And in order to get onto this, we'll call it GSA schedule list, if you will, you need to respond with a proposal to the solicitation. We've got the solicitation number there, and where do you find that? Over on sam.gov. Pretty simple. There is no due date, so when GSA makes changes to the requirements to get on, or if you're already on the schedule and whoops, this is the technical issue, and GSA makes updates, they will call those updates refresh numbers. So once you have your proposal prepared, you hop over to the eoffer.gsa.gov site and submit your proposal there. Once you kind of go through all the steps with the contracting officer that is assigned to your offer, you are made a GSA schedule award. There's no money tied to that. It's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, meaning that you're just more or less have a hunting license. You still need to go out and find contracts. So currently there's about 18 to 20,000 companies that are on the schedule. And so you're going to be competing with them for contracts. Here's just a screenshot of what you would be looking at when you go over to download the solicitation on the sam.gov website. And the way that GSA organizes the schedules is through primarily SIN numbers, but let me just back up a couple steps here, 2 steps. They are categorized by 12 large categories and 81 subcategories, as you can see, and then the SINs, the special item numbers, which just further identify what your offering is, whether you're selling products, services, IT software, IT services. There are going to be 21 SIN numbers that you select from, and I've got a screenshot. 2 important things here are your SIN numbers are going to be different, but very similar to your NAICS codes, your North American Industry Classification System. And the various SINs within GSA, most of them are going to require that you have just one past performance experience. So something that you've done that's relevant to the special item number description. There are some SINs that have additional requirements. For example, some may require 2 contracts. And there's other hoops that you have to jump through for different SINs, but because there's 291 and because we've only got about an hour today, I'm not going to go through each of those. I would say it's incumbent upon you, the prospective vendor, to download those solicitation documents for your SIN to make sure that you meet, preferably exceed those requirements. Here's a screenshot. I kind of moved some columns around. This is the list of the 291, well, just the top couple, but a couple things to point out. The NAICS codes, if you look at the bottom, there are, it's like 3rd and 4th from the bottom, the 811220, I think it is, or those are both the same NAICS codes, but they have different SINs. So again, focus on the SINs. And you can see here in the kind of orange and yellow colors that I've highlighted the large category and the subcategories, which I talked about on the last slide. So there's kind of a visual that makes it a little more relevant and probably easier to understand versus listening to me speak. When you download this SIN spreadsheet, which again is found on the solicitation, there's a couple columns to the right of this, or maybe it's, I think it's blocked here by my screen, but you'll see the column for TDR and it'll either say yes or no. On that, eventually they're all going to say yes, but if you don't know what that is, just hold onto your seats because Shauna will be covering that in a couple moments. Okay, let me just dig in here a little bit deeper and try to pick up our pace. So the GSA schedule, it is just a marketing tool. It's absolutely not required. And again, it's one of many, many, many options that the government has to purchase from you. However, there should be an asterisk there that says, keep in mind what Shauna covered with the executive orders and a lot of these procurements moving over to GSA. So who can use the schedule? The entire federal government, as well as some state, local, and education, meaning some universities, as well as quasi-government, meaning the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, the IFC, the IADB, a lot of these multilateral banks. So you just need to check. Sometimes you need to inform the customer that they do have the ability to purchase off of the GSA schedule. But just keep that in mind that it doesn't only have a use in federal government. So as I mentioned, it is one of many, 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 many options that the government has to purchase from you. Here's a list of some others. Most common is really going to be full and open competition, where you're going to see those procurements over on sam.gov. We obviously have set-asides and then department-wide contract vehicles. So some departments and even some agencies have their own contract vehicles. So the takeaway really is to determine who is your customer and how do they purchase. Also keeping in mind executive orders. So GSA is just one of many ways. Okay, because it is a contract, you're therefore going to have terms and conditions, which means compliance, which means there is going to be a cost of doing business by simply having a GSA schedule. So should you pursue the solicitation, send in a proposal and get the award, you have initially a 5-year contract with 3 option year periods. Each of those are 5 years, comes to 20 years total. So GSA does require that you bring in a certain amount of money through your schedule, and the minimums are listed here. So for the first period, this does not mean 100,000 year one, 100,000 year two, 100,000 year three, and so forth. This is 100,000 for that first 5 years, and then 125K for each of the periods after. If you have a $5 million contract with the Air Force, but they're not purchasing through your schedule, GSA does not care. These sales need to be through your schedule because GSA is looking for your industrial funding fee payment, which is the 0.75% that I mentioned, which allows them to pay their bills. Okay, and here is that information. As I mentioned, the 0.75%. If you have no sales through your schedule, then you owe GSA absolutely nothing. That's not a good thing. If you have a schedule, though, you really want a good chunk of your federal sales revenue to be going through the schedule. And that's just another accounting compliance kind of back office piece that you'll need to be cognizant of. Once you're on the schedule, here's the reporting FAS site that you go to report your sales and pay the fee. And also, if you're a large business, there will be a subcontracting plan component to this. The reason I mentioned this is because there's probably a few small businesses on the line. And if you are considering, and this is a little bit going off on a tangent here, but I just wanted to mention it as a resource, that if you're a small business, you may want to be looking at these large businesses who require a subcontracting plan, which sorry, this is jumping. And those large businesses are designated over on the GSA eLibrary site, which you saw the slide, and they will have an O next to their name. Now, you can subcontract to them, and you absolutely do not need a GSA schedule to be a subcontractor to a GSA schedule holder. So I'd encourage you, if this is of interest, to do something. You need to do more homework than just this, but you would find the special item number that your products or services or software fall under. Find the large businesses. I've got them circled there with an O just to kind of show you what it looks like. Look at their prices to make sure that your prices aren't going to be 2x theirs, because it would not be a profitable engagement, because usually the large businesses will dictate a price to you. But again, that's just a resource and a little bit off on a tangent there. As I mentioned earlier, the GSA will make changes to the requirements. They are currently on refresh 28. And so if you're a existing schedule holder, then you will go in and accept what they call mass mods. And I've got a screenshot of what that looks like, just in case you're curious. And the other piece is, if you were selling products to GSA, you want to make sure that your products are Trade Agreement Act compliant and also do not conflict with anything that is being sold through Ability One. That is through Department of Justice, Unicor. So you can sell those products, just not through your GSA schedule. So to recap here, it's a simple marketing tool, not required. You've got quite a bit of hefty competition on this schedule because everyone's kind of on the same playing field. Your prices are going to be similar. What's really going to set you apart with the GSA schedule is that you've got strong relationships with your potential buyers. Again, the SINs are really what is how GSA segments what you do. You're going to have past performance, but the main focus is really your price, specifically low prices. Okay, so let's talk about the three main sections: administrative, technical, and pricing. Before I turn it back over to Shauna. So your pricing section is going to include these components. The GSA checklist is not required, but it is helpful just for your own internal compliance before you fire this baby off to GSA. Your financials should be healthy. If not, GSA's financial team may in fact send you a request for some additional banking information and references. The pathway to success and readiness assessment, I would say take those before you decide to get onto the schedule, because there are some questions there that will require some research and will open up your eyes as far as, one of the questions is, how many vendors within your special item number have 0 sales through their schedule? And you'll find that it's kind of the 80-20, or actually more like the 90-10 rule, that 10% of the vendors are doing 90% of the revenue. You want to make sure in your SAM record that you've got your NAICS codes the NAICS codes that you have in SAM are the ones that are designated within the SIN number that you're pursuing. If you've had a previous schedule, if you've been kicked off the schedule because you didn't meet the sales requirement or you submitted a proposal that was rejected, you'll need to note that in this administrative section as well. You also, if you're a large business, you put your supply plan in there. If you're selling products, you'll need a letter of supply from the manufacturer. If you're a dealer, reseller, or distributor, if you're using a company like us or anyone outside to help you with the process and you want them involved kind of start to finish, you'll need that agent authorization letter. You'll need your Section 508 compliance for your website. As I mentioned, the Ability 1 and TAA is related to products only. And if you're submitting as a joint venture, you will need to indicate that. If any of this sounds like a foreign language, then we've got probably 50 other videos on GSA schedules where you can kind of get the details in a slower pace. But next is the technical section. You've got 4 main factors here. As you can see, your corporate experience and your quality control, which are factor 1 and 3, are actually going to include GSA questions. There's about 7 or 8 questions in each of those sections. Answer them as complete as possible. Factor 2 is your past performance questionnaire. If you have CPARs, which you're only going to have CPARs, your contractor performance assessment reporting system, you're only going to have CPARs if you have direct contracts with the government. So most companies probably on the line do not have that. You'll need at least 3 of those. If not, then you download the PPQ, past performance questionnaire from the GSA solicitation, again, found over on sam.gov. You'll need 3 of those. Again, basically customer references. It's going to take your customer all of probably 1 minute to complete that. And I mean that very, very literally. It's a very short 1-pager. They complete it, they sign it, they send it back to you, save it as a PDF, upload it with your offer. Factor 4 is going to take the most amount of time. This is where you'll have your narrative to show that you've done the work that is described in the special item number. Again, some SINs are going to require more than 1 project experience, and some are going to require additional work beyond that. So again, download the documentation over in sam.gov to find out what your specific requirements are. Pricing section, this is the most hairy, this is the beehive, and this is where most companies spend the most amount of time, pull their hair out, or get frustrated. But it can be done, and it is possible. So the main thing to focus on before I talk about what's required in this actual section is that this is really where the microscope goes, where the spotlight is. GSA schedules are really focused on obtaining your lowest prices. So they will look at your rates compared to the other companies that are selling similar or same products, services, or software on the schedule. So if you are smart, and all of you are, I highly encourage you to go on to, there's 2 sites and they're going to be listed later, but the GSA Advantage website for software and products, and then buy.gsa.gov for services, to do some market research before you decide to get on, to make sure that your prices are not going to put you out of business if you get negotiated down to these kind of common denominators. Additionally, your GSA rates are a price ceiling or not to exceed. So once you're on the schedule, you're actually going to be encouraged to give discounts through the schedule to your customers, to your GSA customers. So obviously you're going to have very, very thin margins. And I was not an econ major, but I do know enough to know that with lower margins, you will need heavy volume. If you don't have a lot of volume that you anticipate coming through your schedule, then hopefully you've got some volume in your commercial sales or other sectors or industries that you're selling to. Okay, so in the pricing section, you'll download the price proposal template, commonly referred to as the PPT. There are going to be different templates for your product, software, or services. Make sure you're using the right one and the current version with the current refresh. So if you started this year in January and you said, hey, we're going to get on the GSA schedule, and you download the templates then, let's say they were probably back on January, maybe 22 or 23 refresh, and now they're on 28. Some things may have changed in these documents, so make sure you are current and compliant. There's also another spreadsheet for your pricing terms. Make sure you complete that. And then your support documentation are going to be copies of your invoices, quote sheets, whatever you're using to substantiate the rates that you are proposing to GSA. Your escalation, this will either go one of two paths. You're either using your commercial rates, and you will then go in and make manual adjustments to your GSA schedule at the end of every 12 months to increase your GSA rates. Or perhaps you're using, let's say, market rates, and you're tied to Department of Labor's Table 5, Bureau of Labor Statistics, a escalation there that's perhaps an average of the last 3 periods, which is commonly used. I've got this piece in here I meant to highlight or at least make bold, applicable to non-TDR offers only, which is the CSP, which really was important information in GSA schedules, kind of disclosing who your most favored customer was, meaning what customer were you giving the lowest discounts to, the frequency, and additional information. So Shauna will talk about TDR in a moment and kind of how that affects the CSP, the basis of award, MFC, and all of these lovely acronyms. If you're selling software, you'll need your end user license agreement. Anyone selling services, you're going to need your HR plan. And if you are selling services that fall under Service Contract Act, there's additional documentation that is required. Okay, again, I've mentioned this, but it's important to say it one last time. The GSA's focus is really your lowest prices and making sure that you're competitive with others selling similar or the same products or services. Here's where you can do your research, and I would do it before you decide to get onto the schedule to really kind of know where you're potentially going to fall. And I would suggest doing this if you are going to work with any companies as a subcontractor, as a joint venture, or some sort of teaming agreement, to make sure that someone else's prices aren't going to put you out of business, that you will be profitable, because that's why you're in business. I think this is my section, processes and timeline. Let me buzz through this. So first and foremost, read the solicitation. You guys know where to find it. I've got links in there. Again, it's over on sam.gov, as well as all the documentation and requirements that I just spoke about. Make sure you've got prospects or clients that are going to use this contract vehicle. We used to be a little more hesitant about recommending the schedule for newer companies, but these executive orders, and as this all kind of plays out in going from kind of paper to reality, I think GSA will be more important to federal procurement and the purchases that are made. We talked about researching your competitors. So here's just some rough estimates on timelines. Some of this could take longer because I anticipate an influx based on the inquiries that we're getting over the past couple months of companies that are interested in getting onto the schedule. I know GSA is hiring, I think, an additional 1,000 contracting officers, but there could be a little bit of a hiccup or a road bump before things kind of even out, and some of these timelines kind of get back into normal ranges. And all of this is also going to come with just the caveat in quotation marks, it depends. So if you're submitting an offer with one special item number and 10 labor categories versus somebody that's a large business that has a subcontracting plan, they're selling software, they've got a EULA, and they've got 5 SINs with 100 labor categories under each, which offer is going to, probably get through quicker, something that's maybe a little bit skinnier. Okay, so in order to get together your proposal, it's going to take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, and we are offering a class on this starting in August, where we're doing it in a maximum 10 company. We'll talk about that more later. Anyway, you submit your proposal, you'll get a receipt from GSA, usually within an hour. Sometimes it takes 24 hours, depending if you're submitting at 3 in the morning. After that, GSA will send what they call clarifications. This is the kind of Q&A period where they are kind of probing a little bit further into the details of your offer. Maybe they want to see an additional invoice, maybe the spreadsheet for your offer has been updated while you were kind of waiting for GSA just to review your offer. And again, you may get this in a couple weeks, in 4 weeks, 3 weeks, or you may get it 6 months later. It really, again, just depends. If your financials are not healthy, you may get a note from GSA's financial team requesting the SF-527 and bank references and additional financial information. Once all of this has been resolved, and let me just also state on the clarifications, sometimes there are 2 or 3 rounds of clarifications depending upon how organized and compliant your offer is or not. But then once all of that is resolved, GSA will move to the negotiations where they may ask for additional discounts, prompt payment discounts, volume discounts, etc. Once you all have kind of agreed on the negotiations, and this can go back a couple times, you can counter offer to their offers, and that usually happens over email. Sometimes you may get somebody that wants to do it over a phone. It really just depends. Once those pieces have been resolved, GSA will send over the FPR. As you can see, it's called the Final Proposal Revision. This is a letter. It will recap the terms, conditions, everything that you agreed to. You put it on your letterhead, you date it, you sign it, you send it back to GSA. And then there's some signatures that happen over on the e-offer website, and you've got your award. And the most important thing that happens then at the award is the clock is ticking. You've got to bring in at least $100,000 for those first 5 years. If that's all you think you're going to do, I would say the schedule is probably not in your best interest. You should have a pipeline of opportunities that you're circling back to let them know, hey, we're on the schedule now. Once you're on the schedule, there's still some compliance and some additional work that happens. You've got to upload your authorized price list. You register in the federal acquisition system to make your IFF payments, make sure that you haven't missed any mass mods, and usually the contracting officer can kind of help you on at least that third bullet. And also of importance, you want to make sure that you register in the GSA eBuy system to get the RFP notifications related to your special item number. Keep in mind, like, don't think that just because you're getting these RFP notifications, you're suddenly going to be a, $50 million company because all of these opportunities look like they're wired just for you. Well, yeah, they're going to be, you're going to think they're going to be, right up your alley. This is our sweet spot. But keep in mind, the competition will be more fierce. There will be less competition than what you see on sam.gov, but it's kind of like going from the little leagues to the MLB. Again, more fierce competition. The top 10% of the companies on GSA are really doing the bulk of the work. Some marketing best practices I added down here, just basically putting the GSA logo where it can be visible and make it easy for the government to find you or anyone that buys through GSA. And that business development component, you really want to be doing it before to understand, does your customer even, or your prospect even use the schedule? Is that their preferred method of procurement, or is that going to be a directive that they're going to have to follow because of these executive orders? Okay, back over to Shauna. I'm going to try my best to make sure that the laptop is behaving here, and we'll talk about sin removal. So thank you for your patience.
No, great stuff, Jennifer. You hit on all the things I would have said too. So great stuff. So in 2 recent mass refreshes, you'll see here 26 and 27, GSA removed a bunch of those special item numbers that were underperforming on the schedules where there were low sales or low use, and just because of a management and cost savings, that was done. Under refresh 26, 32 sins were removed, and that included some sins that were specifically designated as small business set aside or SBSA sins. The companies that were on those sins were given the option to submit a mod request within a certain specific period of time and move from that sin to the general list. So what that did is it took them out of a pool that was just a set aside pool into the big pond with everybody, including large businesses. So in order to keep their schedules, a lot of people had to do that. Then refresh 27 came along, and that's one of the most recent ones, and there was another 10 sins that were also removed from that schedule. Now, just because they're removed doesn't mean GSA is not going to be buying those things. It's just that they plan on using alternative methods to do that, and you see those listed here. The commercial platform, if you're not familiar with that, is a e-commerce platform very similar to kind of like an Amazon-like commercial platform, and Amazon is one of the platform holders. There are 8 out there, including some small businesses, and each have products, different types of products on them. And you can reach out to commercial platform contractors and see if you can get listed there as well. That's another avenue. And then there are other mass sins that may take on some of the scope of these others that were removed, or just go out on the open market and do it through sam.gov. So there was a refresh 28 that was issued, like Jennifer said, that's the current refresh, but that was just to fix the system issue for current schedule holders when they were trying to accept their mass mod. So it really didn't change anything. The last refresh of any significant change was 27. And then the transactional data reporting, that refresh 27 also in June 2025 expanded this transactional data reporting to from a pilot status where it was to an additional 62 sins, excuse me, bringing that list up to 177 total sins. And it also changed that transactional data reporting from optional to mandatory for those sins. So what transactional data reporting is it requires monthly contractor reporting of 16 elements, 4 of those being optional. And those are finite data points such as the price being paid, who's paying it, you know, the contract number, things like that, where GSA can go in and look at an account management, category management principles. We can go in and look at who's buying what from whom under which sins and kind of see where the government's money is flowing in those areas. So contractors will have under the TDR 30 days after the end of each month to do their reporting, and existing contractors have until 30 September to accept the TDR mass mod to be eligible for it. And if you have one sin, so a lot of times you're going to propose on multiple sins, like, you know, Jennifer said, it can be multiple sins, it can be one sin. But if you have a sin subject to TDR, then you have to opt into the TDR program. You don't have a choice. And the TDR program is going to be expanded to all remaining sins during FY 2026. So eventually all of them will have this requirement. There is on the GSA TDR website a comparison so you can see what a TDR versus a non-TDR offer has to comply with. But the main pluses to the TDR program, it will eliminate this commercial sales practice disclosure, who your most favored customer is, and that relationship that GSA has always used between the most favored customer price and the basis of award price, meaning the price that they are basing your award of your rates on. For that discount relationship, that should you charge a lower price, it would automatically lower your price on the GSA schedule, being a price deduction violation and tracking and reporting those things. So it takes all that out of the pie. So that's good, because that's a very complicated way of pricing, and it is where people, like Jennifer said, trip up. That in the pricing part of GSA schedules is, you know, accurately identifying that most favored customer and negotiating that basis of award price so that the discount relationship is easy to maintain. So, and you can learn more about that. As Jennifer said, there's, I'm sure she has lots of videos on that, but the pricing point is I can't say enough, like she said, a very important focus. And TDR will be a offshoot of that as it plays in at the mandatory and then the expansion further next year. So, I think that's all I have on TDR, Jennifer.
All right, excellent job, Shauna. Thanks for tying it all together here. So we put together some considerations. First, we had actually full disclosure. We had this section called conclusions, but we were like, no, these are things that companies should really consider if you're in the place of considering getting onto the schedule. So to bid or not to bid. And Shauna and I kind of put these together again yesterday as we were kind of saying what are things that companies should think about. And yes, first and foremost, you want to make sure that you read the solicitation. Do you have relationships both within the government and with, you know, potential partners? Are your financials healthy? And Shauna, feel free to jump in here at any point. I don't know if you want to run through the next couple.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you should already have your labor rates established. Going after a GSA schedule is not the time to start building a labor rate. So you want to make sure you have that established. And like Jennifer said, make sure you know where that labor rate sits in comparison to maybe your competition out there. There's lots of places, like she said, you can look. You can even use GSA eBuy and just open up individual schedules of people you know are competition in your local area and look at their rates because they're there. So you get an idea there. Having a human or sales business development rep is really important because you need to have somebody bringing that opportunity into your pipeline, looking at what your go or no go is, because you will be inundated, like Jennifer said, with e-buy notifications coming out, and you can't respond to all of them realistically, nor should you. You want to be smart about that. You need to do your market research and understand who your other competitors are on schedule so that you know where you fit. Sometimes you may want to look at who your competitors are, because people who have and also hold GSA schedules can combine their resources as GSA schedule holders for some opportunities as well, as long as you all hold a schedule. So there's opportunities for teaming and competitive analysis there when you're doing your market research. Jennifer, why don't you go ahead with the rest of them?
Sure. So, yeah, we talked about the competitive analysis, and then the back office compliance is really just ensuring that you've got someone on your team that understands the TDR, IFF payments, and just really the having something in your accounting system that's segmenting your GSA sales from non, and maybe there's a human component to that, at least in the beginning, to set it up. What's the risk of being on versus not on the schedule, and those are going to be specific to your company. There's can't be a blanket answer like, hi, we're a small business, women owned, and we sell IT professional services, should we get on the schedule? Well, it really depends on where you are in the process, what relationships do you have. So there's not even a blanket answer for companies of a certain demographic or a certain industry or a certain location or whatever. So just keep that in mind. And then I always ask companies, okay, why do you want to get on the schedule? If you've got some valid reasons that, hey, we've got 100 opportunity or 50 opportunities in our pipeline, and more than half of them are looks like they're going to go GSA schedule, and we've partnered, we've been a subcontractor to companies on the schedule, and now we think we can do the work ourselves. Those are the legitimate answers. Those are showing that you've done perhaps some market research, that you do have a human, a sales business development out there that has kind of laid the groundwork that kind of sets you up. You don't want to jump into the GSA swimming pool if there's no water. So how big is the market? How much revenue for whatever it is you're selling is GSA purchasing versus all of those other ways that the government purchases, what's going through OTAs, what's going through set-asides, what's going through full and open competition, what's going through other contract vehicles. You should have those answers, and there's public data out there. The data is public, so use it to get those answers and use the data to then determine where you're going to spend your time, how you spend your time, and let that build your strategy. There's no other market out there that has public data like this, so use it to your advantage. You'd be really foolish not to. Shauna, anything to add here on considerations?
No, I think this covers a large swath of them. And like you said, GSA schedules may be a route that the government is going to use to buy, but it won't be the only route, as Jennifer pointed out before. And it's not always a good fit. And it's important to find out if it's a good fit for you before you go into the resources and spend the money to actually pull together a proposal. These are not easy, quick proposals to do. So I just want to, preface that. It's really important to kind of have this picture before you jump in, like Jennifer said, to the GSA pool.
Exactly. And this is why I have gray hair.
Me too.
Okay. And so we're gonna, before we take your questions, I'll kind of recap now that we thought it was important just to kind of say, okay, we gave you guys a lot of information. Now here are some ways that we can potentially help you navigate through the swamp here. So Shauna, back over to you.
Yeah, so I have a website, it's fedsubk.com, and basically it's an educational portal where you can find steps to get started in your federal contracting journey with a step-by-step readiness assessment and some info to help you on each step. I mean, there may be people out here who haven't even registered in SAM, or if they have, aren't sure what the next steps are to create and find even these opportunities or some of this data that we're talking about, this public data. And the website talks about that, including in the knowledge library. There's lots of common links and info for you on common and hot topics that are going on right now. I do have a curated list of small business events, webinars, guides, and like Jennifer, she's got a ton of stuff. So, you know, Jennifer's stuff is amazing as well. But there's some small business events that are free and they're online and they're during a lunch hour or in the evening, and you know, take advantage of those. I curate a list of what I think is the best use of your time as a small business owner, because I know you wear many hats, like Jennifer, like I do. There's insights. I have a blog with timely articles and latest procurement news. And then I also offer personalized solutions, mentorship, and coaching packages to help people through. And if I can't do it for you, I have a trusted network of support providers like Jennifer, who, you know, I will gladly, who are out there on the website listed so that you can know there are people who know what they're doing and you can trust. And I've worked with them and they do a great job. So that's just a little bit about Fed Sub K and how we can support you.
Great stuff here, Shauna. Her website is fantastic. And if you can't tell, she's a nice person, easy to work with, obviously has a lot of knowledge, comes from the government side, understands the process both from the government side and the business side. So I encourage you to check out fedsubk.com and connect with Shauna on LinkedIn. She's always is posting great content. Quick blurb about us here. So I just kind of got 2 bullet points. First is our main focus is really just to educate our potential client base. I figure an educated customer makes a better customer, because the more they know, the easier they are to work with, the better questions they're going to ask. And so we've got events, conferences, webinars, as I mentioned, 770 plus videos out on YouTube. And we cover everything from stuff that will put you to sleep, like the FAR, the DFARs, and the agency supplements. But also we've got webinars on, well, GSA schedules, but also proposal writing, business development, marketing. A lot of those will cover best practices. We've got and it's not just me speaking, so you won't have to listen to my voice. Most of our speakers are guest speakers unless it's GSA schedules. So again, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a free link. We've got a couple pages here at the back of the deck with links to everything that we talked about today, then some. And so most of these things here are complimentary as far as the videos, our events, conferences, are paid, newsletter is free, the webinars are free, and then consulting services, those, yes, are paid. We help companies with these contract vehicles, GSA as well as VA, and then some other services that I've got listed here, and they're listed on our website as well. On that note, on the GSA consulting side, we typically, for the last 20 plus years, which is again the reason for the gray hair, and maybe why we're not on video today, but that's really more of a bandwidth issue. We have primarily worked one-on-one with clients and kind of shepherd them through the process A to Z. We are still doing that. That is not going away. But in light of the influx of companies that want to get onto GSA because of everything that we talked about today, we are going to be offering a group class. This will begin in August. If you are here on this, if you've registered for this webinar, then you'll get an email with further details about that. But we'll basically, in a group setting, help companies through the administrative, technical, pricing sections and review them to make sure they're compliant, and help you with the submission process through GSA e-offer. And that is online, not in person. Okay. Here, as you can see, we've got Shauna's information, my information. The slides will come to you if you, again, have registered for today's webinar. And then just to let you know, let me just kind of go through here. We put together, as I mentioned a couple times already, a bunch of links here that will be useful to you. Everything that we talked about, as far as solicitations, where to do research, information on the executive orders. We talked about FAR Part 8. We've got some links there, the Federal Register, which will keep you up to date on things that are happening. And again, our information. But let me go back to the slide that has, if I can, if the system will allow me to back up a little bit, I'll just keep our contact information up and we will answer some questions. A couple minutes after 1 o'clock, we weren't quite sure how this was going to play out with questions. So let me see what we have here in the chat logs. So I'm just going to read these out, Shauna, and we can kind of volley back and forth, and I'll try to be cognizant here of the time. And please still continue to type your questions in, because when we download the registration list, the questions are captured. Just do not put them in the chat, otherwise we will potentially miss them. Okay, first question. We have heard a rumor that NASA soup may be moved to GSA. Is there any truth to this? My answer is I don't know, but I'm going to toss it over to Shauna for her to look into her crystal ball.
I don't know either. And I will just say that there's been talk that yes, it will, or no, it won't. I believe NASA Soup, in my opinion, is a great vehicle. I think it would be a shame if it, for some reason, were to disappear. I think there's a lot of lobbying going on to keep it going, and also keep it at NASA possibly. Now, I don't know if that will happen because GSA is the IT lead agent now for the government, but I do believe that that will be tightly managed if it should go to GSA, because I know that the senior procurement executives at both agencies are well respected, respect each other, and understand how important that vehicle is, and how fast it can get work done. So I don't know for sure, but we'll all know as soon as it happens, because this is the hot topic of the day, I think, for a lot of people.
Exactly. And for anyone that's just hearing the question, we're not talking about soup as in something you would eat in the perhaps winter time, but this is SEWP, NASA Soup. It's a contract vehicle. There's many department and agency contract vehicles. Again, GSA is one of many, many, many ways that the government purchases, and GSA also has its own flavor. What we were talking about today was kind of just what I call the GSA straight up vanilla. We're not talking about Oasis or any of the other flavors. So that will take me here to my second question, which reads, how will GSA be utilizing the new Oasis Symphony portal? For that, I don't have an answer. I kind of stay in the lane of GSA vanilla. Shauna, I don't know if you have any insight.
Well, I think there's still discussion about Oasis Plus, and I think the Symphony portal is going to stay there for a while until those decisions are made. Again, I think Oasis Plus is another one kind of like NASA Soup, where we're trying to decide, does it stay, does it go? How long does it stay? Does it become some merge type of quasi, contract vehicle with something else? Who knows? Again, I think Oasis Plus is like GSA's answer, to NASA Soup's, contract they've had, similar but different in some ways. But yeah, the question is going to be, is there room for all of it at GSA when it's there? So again, I hate to say it, but no firm answers at this point.
Great. And this next question will be for you, Shauna, which reads, what are the common pitfalls or mistakes new TDR participants make, and how can they be avoided?
Well, I think one of the first mistakes is that you're not prepared for the capture of the data that you need to capture. So I think it's making sure that you understand what those 16 elements are, and you have a way to capture it and segregate it for the purposes of reporting. So I think number one, if you haven't started that now, or you're a new schedule holder and you see that your SIN requires TDR reporting, have that set up in advance, just like you would the aggregate reporting for the industrial funding fee and payment of that, and make sure you're planning ahead for that. Don't get caught behind, because it is a monthly reporting requirement. It will be easy to get behind on that if you don't have it going from the start. So I think that's really important. And also just not realizing, if you have one SIN where you have that requirement that, watch these refreshes as they come, to make sure that, for example, like Jennifer said, you can, and I have a client that's in the middle of this right now, who has submitted a proposal under one refresh and pulled those documents down, and now they've just had their package kicked back for the second time because another refresh hit during that time frame that their package was under review, and now one of their SINs is TDR mandatory, and they had said we are opting out of TDR, and now they have to say, oh no, we agree that we will comply with TDR, and their whole package got kicked back just for that. So I'm just saying, just pay attention. If you're going to be in the GSA time frame, pool, you need to be watching these refreshes. You need to be paying attention to these solicitations, so you know what these changes are. I think that's the biggest thing. Is this is not a set it and forget it type of contract. you really have to manage these changes and know what they are as they're coming through.
Exactly. Just think of it as like getting on a roller coaster and they, you must be this tall to ride. You got to make sure that they haven't increased the height or other requirements.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Great analogy.
Okay, next question is, how will GSA use TDR data for pricing enforcement, and could this affect contract renewals or modifications for services?
Well, I don't know that TDR is going to be really used for price enforcement. It's really more about seeing what the government's buying and what the prices are that are being paid and who's buying, right? It's data that Office of Federal Procurement Policy and OMB want to look at to see where money's going, what different agencies are spending. Are there any places where, let's say, one agency is paying, a premium and another agency is getting a major discount, and what does that look like? And making sure that then they use that data to maybe, inform future pricing negotiations, that the contracting officers do, or even vehicles that they want to use or create or maybe expand, to make sure that the government is getting the best deal. I think that's the big thing to know, is that that's where the TDR data is really going to go to make informed buying decisions government wide. GSA has been criticized that they have not used the TDR data, the way that they have intended over the years. There is an IG report out there on GSA about that. Might be an interesting read for you to understand, but just to get an idea of what the intention is for TDR versus what GSA has done with it to date. But that is what is the stated intent with expanding the TDR pilot, is to get those insights in buying.
Great. And next question, still here on TDR. And Shauna, you tell me how you are with time. Does TDR reporting replace all older compliance approaches like the PRC, price reduction clause, and commercial sales practice, or are there transactional overlapping requirements?
It's going to depend if you have SINs that are or aren't TDR mandatory. So you may have a SIN that is TDR mandatory and one that isn't. So you may have to do both for a while until the TDR reporting requirement kicks in across the board. It is meant to replace the fact that you would have to disclose a most favored customer and that buying relationship for economic price adjustments, based on, like your most favored customer is now getting a lower rate, but your GSA price is higher than that most favored customer rate is now. It is meant to kind of get rid of that kind of gyration that was in there, of you having to, provide, invoices that substantiate your most favorite customer and how much you've charged to them, and making sure that your GSA rate is no higher than that. It is to get rid of some of that burden for the contractor, and I think that's a good thing. I do think it shifts some burden over to the contractor in terms of this monthly reporting that contractors just have to be aware that they need to do. So you will see some changes, and you may have both for a while that you got to deal with depending on what SINs are on your contract.
Great. Okay, next question is, what tips or best practices help speed up the review approval for professional services? I'm assuming that is the questions being asked in regards to submitting a proposal to get onto the GSA schedule. And I'll kind of go with the skinny theme that we were kind of talking about today, as far as making the FAR a little skinnier, as far as having a, competitive and compliant, really, proposal. And hopefully your company's not in too much of a rush, because it's kind of like a hurry up and wait process. So, limited SINs that you meet or preferably exceed the requirements for. And yeah, I mean, it really does come down to having a compliant proposal, but instead of offering, 10 SINs, maybe you go in with 3 that are really just your core capabilities, particularly if you're a small business, and, limited line items under each. You can always make a modification the day after you're on the schedule. And one other thing I wanted to note that I failed to do on one of the earlier slides was, in that timeline process, when GSA sends their email for clarifications, they may send it to you on Tuesday and they say, give us your answers by Thursday at 3 o'clock. If you're able to, if it's a quick question that you guys can answer internally in, 3 hours or 1 hour, the sooner you send GSA a response, and if it's before the due date that they're giving you, the more likely they're going to potentially, and again, this all depends, that they will be a little more quick, and maybe that's not the right word, but in working with you. So if you show that you're motivated and quick to respond, and you want to get this award, that will help accelerate. Again, I kind of say that it's hard to use the word accelerate or quick when we're talking about government, but those are things that kind of help move the process along at a better pace.
Yeah, and I would say for professional services too, I mean, some of the things that can trip you up a little bit, and I've seen this happen with clients, is some of their maybe labor category descriptions may mention aspects of, let's say, another sin. And GSA will take that very seriously. If your sin says something to the effect like, this is a biologist that works with blah 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 blah, and also helps oversight during construction field operations, GSA may go, oh, construction, you can't do this on this sin, and you can get a kickback for something like that in professional services. So really make sure like your labor category descriptions are tight, everything locks into the sin that you're trying to get, or the sins you're trying to get, so that you don't have any of these little trips and hiccups along the way, because that will result in these successive rounds, like Jennifer was saying, of review that will exponentially extend your time frame for getting your schedule on target.
Yeah, great point, Shauna. Thank you. And yeah, GSA they read these, they read your labor category descriptions, they read your project description. So this is really your chance to shine, and also be careful that you're being compliant. Next question is talking about GSA being very slow to approve modifications. So once you're on the schedule, if you make a mod to add a product, change a price, change your address, whatever it is, what is GSA doing to be more responsive? My professional / personal thought here is I think it could potentially get worse before it gets better, just because of the, again, influx of companies submitting proposals to GSA to get on. I'm not sure what they're doing internally, how they're prioritizing, existing schedule holders. Obviously, we're in Q4, which is, the biggest time or the greatest spending period. But Shauna, I don't know if you have any insight on anything that's more formal than that.
Yeah, I mean, this contracting officers are not broken up by just looking at new proposals versus EMODs, right? They get, when the next one comes in, they get it, and they get it for cradle to grave, right? From the start of your schedule all the way through the administration. So the thing to understand is they are juggling hundreds and hundreds of EMODs and offers and rounds of things going on. So that's just, humanly, if you think about what you juggle in terms of if you got hundreds of emails a day, how fast you can get to it. So just, having a little patience. To the workforce turnover that we've seen in the recent months is not helping that. And for people getting hired into GSA, even if they're coming from another type of government agency, it is not contracting is not contracting across the government. It is different in every agency, and every agency has its own nuances. So just know they're having to learn and also adapt while they're under the pressure of doing this. I would just say that if you have a mod that needs to go out because you have a customer that wants that product and is ready to buy it now or within a very short period of time, you can let the contracting officer know that, especially if you have an email from that customer saying, hey, we just want to see that on your schedule and we're ready to buy it. They will try to push those to the front if they can. Don't cry wolf though if you're not in that situation, because they will remember that too. I'm just going to tell you, and you don't want that either. So there's just some ways to do that. But if you have a customer ready to buy, I mean, they'll try to push it.
Yeah, I will also say, and this is just from past experience, that for new offers, this obviously is not really answering the question about modifications, but keep in mind that I mentioned GSA, charges this industrial funding fee, the 0.75%, so less than 1%. And sometimes you have to think of them as a for-profit or a business entity. So they are motivated by the dollar. So what I have seen over the years, majority of, I'd say, well, 50–60% of our clients are small businesses, and then the other, we'll say 40% are large businesses, some brand names that you guys would recognize. And in helping them, the large businesses get onto the schedule, GSA moves very fast to get them on, because they know that these large businesses are going to have a better chance of winning contracts, therefore bringing in money, therefore paying the industrial funding fee. So that's just an observation.
Yes, and those are the schedules too. The ones where the most dollars flow through are the ones that have the most contracting officers assigned to them as well. So to keep that flow going. So
exactly. Yeah. Yep. I'm also gonna just note that it is 20 after 1. It looks like we've lost a couple of attendees, not everybody.
Yeah.
But what Shauna and I had kind of talked about doing is taking any questions that have been written in here, and we may either do another webinar just answering the questions, or she and I may do a recording offline answering these questions and then send it out to you guys so that way every question is answered. So in other words, let me just try to simplify. If you do have a question, type it in. We will answer it. It may not be today or tomorrow, but we will regroup internally and figure out a way to answer everybody's question. Shauna, any thoughts on that, or any other last parting words before we sign off here?
Yeah, I think Jennifer and I, we definitely want to make sure we get everybody's questions answered. So one way or another, we'll make sure we do that. And in the meantime, you have both of our contact information, so you can always reach out as well. And I think we've covered a lot today. You got a lot of food for thought, and we're happy to support or share whatever information we can going forward. Like I said, Jennifer's got tons of resources. I have tons of resources. And between the two of us, there's a lot out there to just self-start. And then where you get tripped up, you know who to call.
Great. Thank you, Shauna, for partnering with me on this. It was great to co-present with you. Your insight and your content and just your knowledge is valuable. We also appreciate everybody that made time in the event, again, that you're listening to the recording. Give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. And we will circle back on the questions. I'll keep this the question open for another minute or two. That way everybody can type in anything that they have, and we'll be sure to respond to each and every question. Okay, thanks, Shauna, and thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.